Good evening and welcome to Class 5's Story from the Shed. Episode 13, featuring Rebel, the roaring dinosaur. And our main characters tonight are Stuart Horton and his dad. And today's chapter is very much about machines. If you look at these machines here, these are coin-operated machines for sweets. It's a coin-operated slot machine. And remember, they're going to look at a numismatic collection in the local library. Sorry, not in the local library, in the local museum. So, chapter 19. So Stuart and his dad have rushed to the Beaton Museum where Stuart has to look at the coin collection. "Hello," said the woman on the desk. "Does this little fellow, does he want the young explorer's backpack?" "No," said Stuart. "It's got stickers," said the woman encouragingly. "No," said Stuart more firmly. His father was standing beside him in the foyer of the museum, gazing at a scale model of a Roman catapult. "Of course, the Latin name, ballista, is the root of our modern word ballistics," he said, to no one in particular. Stuart was looking at the museum map on the wall. Most of the room seemed to be filled with an exhibition about Beaton during the Second World War, but there were one or two that were labelled miscellaneous collections. Miscellaneous means various. He needed a bit of time to poke about on his own. If you're interested in ballistae," said a loud voice behind him, "then you'll find a further collection of Roman siege engines in room 4. Stuart turned to see a man in a checked suit. He was wearing a badge that said, "Rod Felton, Chief Curator," and he looked enormously enthusiastic in a toothy sort of way. "In particular, there is the post-classical example known as an onager," he added. Stuart's father looked up keenly. "I believe the name onager is also the Latin for a wild ass," he said. Rod Felton almost jumped with delight. "That's absolutely correct. It's derived from the kicking action of the machine, which in turn is the result of torsional pressures from a twisted rope, and the later medieval version, the mangonel, was also a—" With any luck, thought Stuart, they'll be yakking for half an hour. Unnoticed, he slipped past the desk into the museum. Hardly anyone else was in there. He passed a 1940s classroom and a 1940s grocer's shop, and then walked through a screened-off section containing a back garden air raid shelter with a set of bunk beds inside. As he did so, a siren sounded and all the lights went off, and there was a short pause before a tape of bombing noises began. He carried on walking. Beaton in wartime continued. There were photographs and leaflets and posters, and a large-scale model of the town showing where bombs had dropped and where underground shelters had been built. Stuart lingered briefly over the model. It was very neatly made with lots of detail, and he was just tracing the route he'd taken the day before when he heard the curator's voice bellowing from somewhere behind him. "The weapon is known as the trebuchet or trebuchet, on the other hand, was employed in the Middle Ages during sieges in order to—" Oh, they must be following him, children. Stuart broke into a jog and raced through the rest of the wartime exhibition. The next room contained Roman weaponry and armour, and the one after that a collection of Victorian tools and farm implements, as well as a large fake cow being milked by a huge fake dairymaid and an enormous fake horse being shoed by a giant fake blacksmith. Stuart hurried towards the next door and paused. There was a small brass plaque screwed to the central panel. The numismatological room, endowed 1922 by Horton's miraculous mechanisms. So this is where the coin collection will be held. He pushed open the door and found himself staring at the view he'd seen earlier in the photograph. The glass cabinet containing Roman coins, the array of coin-filled cases beyond. Behind them was a tall row of display boards showing how money is made, with cartoonish illustrations. Stuart walked round the display and caught his breath. Beneath the window stood 3 large, old, coin-operated machines. He walked towards them, feeling as if he were moving in slow motion. They were sited on a little plinth roped off from the rest of the room, and a sign on the wall above them read, "Vintage coin-operated machinery from a variety of Beaton businesses, manufactured by Horton's miraculous mechanisms, collected and donated to Beaton Museum by Mr. Anthony Horton." Anthony short for Tony, of course. "Do not touch." And there would have been something like these, children. These are some toy representations, but there would have been something like this, where you put a coin in to get something out. Stuart read the sign again, scarcely able to believe his eyes. Collected and donated by Mr. Anthony Horton. It was as if his great-uncle Tony was standing right there, grinning, giving him the thumbs up and urging him onwards. 3 machines, thought Stuart. 3 numbers needed for the safe. And all at once he knew with utter certainty this was where he would find the combination. He ducked under the rope and climbed onto the plinth. To his left stood the cinema toffee machine. It was a square metal box on legs with the words, "Choose our choose," stamped on the front, and a picture of a toffee with a bite taken out of it. There was a slot for a coin at the top and a hole for dispensing the toffees at the bottom. The machine on the right was identical in appearance apart from the wording, which read, "Bicycle puncture repair kits, only 3D. In the centre stood the fairground machine. It was much more eye-catching than the other 2. The lettering was in yellow and red. The bell at the top had been brightly polished, and the giant mallet was glossy with black paint. At the base of the machine stood something that looked like an iron mushroom, about 1/2 metre high, and behind it there was a diagram of a stickman hitting the mushroom with a mallet. "Are you a weakling or a man mountain? Only the truly strong can ring the bell," was printed next to the diagram. Stuart looked around to check that no one had come into the room, and then he stepped forward, already feeling for a 3p in his pocket. According to the order of the photos in the book, the cinema toffee machine should come first. He pushed the coin into the slot and pulled the lever. So imagine he's putting the coin into the slot. There was a brief rattling sound, and then the slither of something coming down a chute and a loud thud as it reached the bottom. He reached in and removed a small paper bag. Inside it was a solid, slightly sticky clump of toffees, immovably welded together by heat and time. These must be ancient toffees, children. Hurriedly, Stuart had another feeling around inside the hole, but there was nothing else there. Shoving the bag into his pocket, he took another 3p out and moved quickly across to the machine on the right, the one that dispensed puncture repair kits. And then he paused, reaching out for a disbelieving hand. The slot for the coins had been covered with a thin strip of metal. Oh! It was held tightly in place by 2 large screws. Desperately useless, he prised at them with his fingernails. He could have yelled in frustration. Suddenly, he remembered the tools in the Victorian room. He ducked under the rope again and raced back there. It was empty of visitors. The tools were fixed to the wall in fan-shaped arrangements. He could see a display of hammers and one of chisels, and finally, with a leap of the heart, he spotted an entire array of screwdrivers of different sizes, with age-darkened blades and smooth wooden handles. So that's it. He can get a screwdriver from there, take it into the other room, unscrew the plate, and put the coin in the machine. They were just out of his reach, because he is a bit short, you know. He stood on tiptoe, but they were still too high for him, so he looked around for something to stand on, and saw that the large fake dairymaid was seated on a 3-legged stool. She was fixed in a sitting position, so he lifted her up. She was surprisingly heavy, and propped her head first against the cartwheel. Then he grabbed the stool and climbed onto it. He could now reach the screwdrivers. Each was fastened to the wall with a pair of plastic loops. He pulled at the handle of one of the largest. The loop snapped easily, far more easily than he'd expected. He found himself wavering backwards, stepping into mid-air, sticking out a hand to break his fall. What broke his fall was the dairymaid's backside. She lurched forward, shoving the cartwheel with her head. At that moment, the curator and Stuart's father entered the room. Stuart, lying on his back, clutching the screwdriver, could see exactly what was going to happen, and he could do nothing to stop it. The wheel trundled across the room and hit the cow. The cow leaned on the blacksmith. The blacksmith toppled onto the horse, and the horse keeled over sideways, hitting the floor with a most enormous crash. There was another smaller crash as one of its back legs dropped off, and then a final tiny clatter as it lost an ear. So he's completely destroyed the display, children. The silence seemed to go on and on. "Hello, Dad," said Stuart. So he's completely destroyed the museum display while his father's there. Goodness me. What would teeny tiny Tony Horton said? So in the days before you had all your Xboxes and PS4, everything was coin operated and mechanical, not electrical like you have everything today. Hang on, I can hear some strange electrical noises going on now. Oh no! It's Jeannie. She seems to have got teeny tiny Tony in a sort of brain electrocution machine. Will she never give up?